Reactive Training Systems.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the RTS podcast. I'm Mike Tuchscherer. Today we're talking with Coach Gaby and Coach Kenny. Coach Kenny recently got back from coaching at USAPL Collegiate Nationals with Coach John. Together they handled quite a few lifters. I mean, the meet itself was enormous. Over 1,200 lifters, 4 platforms, run over 4 days. Just a absolutely huge competition. So as we were kind of debriefing for ourselves, like what sorts of lessons learned did we come away from this competition, we thought it was a great opportunity for us to share some insights on in-competition handling in a group situation. It's definitely a different challenge, and Coach Kenny in particular having some fresh experience with that, I thought it would be a good conversation to have. It's also worth pointing out that this scenario is not foreign to coaches at all kinds of different levels. Lots of people will coach, a dozen people at a given gym, and then find themselves handling everyone at a state competition or something like that. If that scenario is something I think you might encounter, surely there are some tactics and techniques in this conversation that you'll find helpful. And if you'd like to kind of explore more of that or ask questions directly about it, I would highly, highly encourage you to check out the training lab. You could ask Coach Kenny or any of the RTS coaches, whatever your questions are directly, brainstorm, get advice on specific scenarios that you find yourself coming up against. But I know that particular aspect tends to be undervalued people until they actually get into the community and see the power of that type of interaction. So I should also point out that there are lots of other tools available to you, not least of which is a absolutely massive program library that is available to anyone in the training lab. You can peruse all of our programs, and each program has different variations. We've got tools that we've set up to help you sort through programs. So if you wanted to find one that is designed to be run 5 days a week or designed to be run 3 days a week, you can search for those types of strategies in particular. And while, look, I'm not going to lie to you, I've done a bit of scouting. I've looked at other programs that you see around published on the interwebs. And what strikes me is that lots of times it's one particular strategy, and it'll be that same strategy in a 3-day-a-week package or the same strategy in a 5-day-a-week package or whatever. I can confidently say that our program library has a absolutely enormous range of strategies. Different programs are truly different from each other. There are many different ways to get strong, and the same way is not going to work for everyone. And even if you find the way that works great for you, it's not going to work forever. So having lots and lots of strategies in your pocket is a great way to ensure that progress can come consistently over a long period of time. So again, lots of different ways to get strong. We've captured tons of different strategies, and we're adding more every month. Those strategies can be edited and deployed, and you can manage your athletes, write training and deploy it to them, and so on. And it's not even a side benefit. It's a main feature that you could hop on a call with Coach Kenny or Coach John and ask them about specific techniques or specific tactics that you might use for handling your 8 lifters that you have on competing at the state competition next month. So there's lots of ways that we can help support you, and the training lab is a huge one. I would definitely encourage you to check that out. So without any further delay, let's get into this week's conversation around coaching, handling in competition and group scenarios. Hey everyone, welcome back to the RTS podcasts. And this week we're talking with Coach Gaby and Coach Kenny. So Coach Kenny and Coach John just recently got back from Collegiate Nationals, which is, first of all, an enormous competition, but the topic for today's conversation is kind of centered around coaching groups of people in competition. And I think it's a good timing for this type of conversation because Collegiate Nationals in particular seems to be this kind of pinnacle of group coaching in that you find lots of coaches who are coaching many, sometimes a whole lot of lifters. It's a multiple platform competition. It's a huge competition. There's tons and tons of lifters. So in terms of like a multi-lifter coaching challenge, I struggle to think of one that would be bigger than that. As I mentioned, Kenny and John just recently got back from that, coaching directly the University of Wisconsin-Madison team. As one does when you're in these sorts of events, you jump in and help out as many people as you can also while you're there. Yeah, I guess to start us off, Kenny, what would you say are some of the bigger obstacles that you guys come up against? What makes coaching like significant groups of lifters more difficult than coaching one or sometimes two in a single session?
It's definitely its own unique challenge. I think it can be different for a local level meet with one platform and one warm-up room and everybody's kind of in the same area versus something like you said with Collegiate National where there's 1,200 competitors spaced across 4 days, 4 platforms, 3 sessions a day. It becomes a lot to handle. And so the biggest battle for us there was probably coordination and just making sure that, okay, somebody's going to be with you. You're going to know where to go in the venue because they're huge like places. Like, okay, this is equipment check. This is don't get lost here. Please weigh in. And let's make sure that everybody gets to the platform in order. That is really helpful to have kind of a team to support people. Like often people on our club team will like step up. Like, hey, I can drive people here. I can go with them. We can all do weigh in together and make things a little bit easier. So just having extra helping hands is really helpful. But then coordinating with them can become kind of a challenge too. So it's like, okay, just making sure where everybody is where they're supposed to be is a big piece of what we battle. And for the local level, it's a little bit different. Like we'll have like one platform, usually maybe 2 platforms, and then it kind of becomes a division of roles where it's like, okay, I'm going to talk to my people in the warm-up room, train them, like help them know like, okay, here's when you should load warm-ups for our competitors. And here's how you can help them like stay sane and make sure that they're eating and drinking and getting ready and know that they've got their deadlifts on for deadlift and stuff like that. And then they'll send them to me and I'll be able to help them onto the platform. Like, wait, the bar's not loaded. Okay, now you can go out, do their lift. We'll talk about attempt selection. And then I kind of get to stay in one spot. And it cuts down on a lot of confusion of like who needs to be where by staying in one spot. So those are a couple examples of just how it's a little bit different. There's a lot more people involved, a lot more kind of handoffs. But if you can put people in different spots and all work together, then usually goes pretty smooth.
Yeah, so like a team coaching event almost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've even seen like a lot of other schools will have like people on their team, just typical members. They kind of come in and play a coach's role. We worked with a couple, John and I worked with a couple from, a handful of universities, especially from like Penn State or even like from like, of course, UW-Madison, where we're kind of like working with them or like working with other just general team members and asking for their help to make the process run smoothly.
Yeah, now's the time where I get to put my back in my day hat on and say that like that's just kind of how it was. That's what coaching was. It was mostly your training partners and whatnot, just helping people out. But space has professionalized quite a lot in that amount of time, which is good. If you're a powerlifter and you understand what's going on, there's still space for people. A lot of times you just need people to jump in and get their hands dirty, especially in a situation like that. Having people that can pay attention and generally know what's going on is better than just fewer people that are more overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of ran into that situation a little bit the final day of the competition where we had between John and I and just the UW-Madison club, I think we had 5 or 6 people simultaneously going during the second session of the last day. So we're already exhausted. And John and I each have like a lifter that's covered. I asked a lifter of mine that I trusted to help out. And then we were supposed to have a couple other people to help out as well. But one of them, they're in college. He had finals. And so he was like, man, I'm wiped. I need to like study for my finals. Is there any way that you could have somebody else handle? So I had somebody talk to him. And I was like, do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, man, I'd love to. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'd love to. I'd love to be involved. And so his name is Luke. He did a great job. We kind of like talked through like, all right, what do you need to know? What do you need like to know about this lifter, about the format, what the warm-up room looks like from a coach's perspective and where you need to go, what you need to do. You have to fill out these sheets, like just be aware of that and all these sorts of things. And he did a great job. He got our lifter where he needed to be, made it through the whole meet, made smart decisions, and it was great. So it was a great example of just somebody stepping up to help out.
That's really good that you were able to talk about the rules, because sometimes there are people in the warm-up area that have no idea what's going on, and it's already pretty chaotic enough. So adding more chaos to it definitely doesn't help.
Absolutely.
What would you say was the average experience level for the competitors that you guys were helping out at this competition?
Let's see. I think that around half or a little bit more, maybe 2/3 of our competitors were first-time competitors at the national level. And then the rest had been to, I think, just one other collegiate nationals. I don't think that anybody was like, oh, this is their third time. They've kind of been there, done that, and really have a deep understanding of what the national scene looks like. And so it was a lot of like, this is the biggest meet that they've ever been a part of. This is like a totally different experience. We've obviously flown across the country in order to get to where we need to be. And yeah, it was just kind of cool to see this spread of people. But I also don't think that it made a huge difference. Like everybody was pretty comparably prepared, pretty competent and comfortable knowing the layout of the meet, just because we really tried to hammer that and make sure that everybody has a good understanding of where you need to be when, and also have somebody that knows what's going on with them at all times so that they aren't kind of silently freaking out, wondering, am I doing something wrong? Am I going to miss my squat or something like that? And so it helped things run smooth.
So for those who are competing at their first nationals, would you say this is like their maybe second or third competition, broadly speaking?
Yeah, there were a couple people that have done just truly 2 meets. They did one, they qualified, they went to nationals. The majority of the people that did, it was their first nationals. I think they had already competed maybe 3 times or 4 times prior. So they had a decent bit of competition experience and had been working toward it for a little bit longer, which definitely helps with just kind of understanding the flow of meets.
And that flow is hugely important. I guess where I'm going with this is that experience level, there's still plenty of room for things to go quite off the rails. I may have told this story before, but I remember coaching my collegiate team back in the day and kind of started from not very, we started from not very many lifters at all, really, in the beginning, and then started building the team up. And so by definition, pretty much everybody lacks experience. And we had kind of this core group of people who had been through a couple competitions, 2, 3 competitions, and we're going to like a state level competition. And so I'm thinking, okay, as a coach, I'm going to spend my attention like hand holding these people it's their very first competition. And I'm kind of hand holding them through equipment check and, weigh-ins and all that. And my people who'd done, 2 or 3 competitions, I'm like, well, you kind of get it. I want you to do your equipment check and weigh in and everything. And then, we'll go back to the warm-up room together. And I had this one guy who was, he was a lightweight guy. I mean, this is all old weight classes, so maybe like 62 kilo guy, maybe smaller than that even. Anyway, small guy, not particularly like massively strong dude either, like he's a powerlifter, but he's not going to nationals. So we get everybody weighed in and we go back to the warm-up area and I'm helping him get warmed up. And this was also in the time before like you had the boards that would show you like the flight orders as well. You just listen for when they call your name. They call, so-and-so's up, so-and-so's on deck, so-and-so's in the hole. So I'm just listening for his name. And we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. And I'm thinking, like, we got to be getting close to the end of the flight. Like, he's not that strong. What's going on here? Well, he put his opening attempts in pounds instead of kilos. So it was literally 220% of what he wanted to do. And, I was like, just sit down. You're going to time out on this one, because of course, like right as we noticed that's when they called him to go up. Right. So I'm like, well, just sit down. We're timing out on your opener, I guess. I can't let you go out there and try that. In hindsight, I wish that I would have, because I think in the squat, like 220%, like you won't even get it out of the rack, right? Like you would just go out
I
there
can just
and
visualize this.
yeah, it would be the most epic missed attempt of all time.
But I recently saw the video of that guy at a competition who did that with his bench, and he actually unracked it with the help of a spotter, and then you could just see like it just crushed him. It was crazy.
I saw that too. I felt bad for that. I was like, well, in the squat, at least it won't get out of the rack, but right. But since it was a low level meet, I think they kind of just like, okay, dummy, we'll fix it for you and, keep going. Again, point being, like, stuff like that does happen. You've only done a couple competitions. You kind of know, maybe you should know, but sometimes you just don't, there's no making it for experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think I didn't have anything quite that exciting up in it at Collegiate Nationals, but we had a lifter in the 60 kilo women's raw, and she about a week before the meet, like reached out to let me know, like, hey, like I'm good with all the training and everything. I am over my weight class though, and I want to know like how to get down, like what are we gonna do? And she was like 5.5% over, which was more than she intended to be over her weight class, but it's like a substantial cut. And so we started, working the water cut and gut cut, and also planned to have her like spit and maybe like a hot bath leading into the meet, kind of depending on how things were looking. We ended up using every last one of those options. And I think she even had to weigh in three or four times in order to get to the right weight, or to make weight. And we got through it, and she kept a super level head. She said she was panicking, but you would have absolutely never known, because she was just like, okay, like what do I do now? And it's like, all right, well, keep spinning, walk around, like let's keep going. And weighed in just fine, ate just fine, and then absolutely killed it. Like PRs across the board with like taking the maximum jumps that we were comfortable with, and still hitting RPE 8.5, like definitely leaving a lot of room in the tank on some of her lifts. And so that was just, maybe we'll do it again. We'll have another 5.5% cut. And it just seemed to work out like really, really well. And so she was pretty happy with her performance there.
That's awesome. It speaks to the benefit of having a coach that's experienced with what you need to do to make weight in a situation like that.
That's true. And sometimes also the athlete is freaking out and we can't even tell, because they stay well composed from the outside, but they're freaking out from the inside. So I think it's also important to already find the right words, not overtalk, of course, because we also need to stay composed, but to acknowledge the situation and already try to reassure the athlete.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also like when you're coaching a group, you try to individualize your handling to a degree, but you can't give individualized attention to the same degree as you would if you would handle someone, one single athlete or two athletes. So, and it also kind of reminds me, I could compare it to a classroom, right? You're a teacher and you have different kind of children in front of you. So the students all have different levels of experience. So how do you actually manage this at competitions? Because it's not only that if they have different kind of experience, that they have different kinds of expectations, but they're also going through different kinds of emotions during the competition. So how do you manage that to meet those emotions without everything being chaotic all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison with the teacher in a classroom for sure. I think a lot of it, or a lot of, we got a lot of benefit from planning, I should say. So we knew beforehand what people would be in what session, how many coaches we'd have available, and who could cover who. So, for example, Thursday night, this is the first day of the competition. We had the lifter who I was talking about with the large water cut. We had another competitor in the 60 kilo women's, and we had a men's 67.5 competitor. And so we had 3 people. So I took care of one. John took care of the 67.5 kilo male, and another outside coach took care of our other 60 kilo female lifter. So we had people kind of spread out, so there could be a little bit more individual attention, and we'd still kind of like operate as a little bit of a group, so that if, John's very skilled with nutrition and with his bodybuilding background. So if he notices something kind of going off the rails, maybe Kenny needs some help with this topic or just explaining it to one of his lifters, then he'll jump in, and he did, and he explained like what's going on and what he would recommend. And so we could all kind of lean on each other, but also give individual attention to our respective lifters. And in this case, we could kind of like if anyone knew the lifter, we could brief the others on like how they might interact. Like I know that the lifter I was taking care of, she might be a little bit nervous here and there, but she'll do whatever she needs to and is very good with direction and does a great job. So as long as I could just be kind of like, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I think we should do, can you do that? Then it was going to be all smooth. Versus the lifter that John was handling, we talked to his coach beforehand and knew that, okay, like he's really kind of like got it down. He just needs a little bit more guidance. Like he's got the mental side down, I should say, but is pretty new to competition. This is only his maybe second or third competition. He's going to need someone to kind of like restrain his attempts and make sure that he's making smart decisions and still eating throughout the meet, and just kind of remind him of those little things that become more important during the session. So in that way, by having multiple people accessible, we could kind of individualize things and then just have a bigger network of support, and combine that with planning and knowing a little bit of background with the lifters beforehand and talking to them. Then it was really smooth, and I think it was a good experience for them all.
It reminds me kind of how Gabby, you and Peter and did things at the World Championship last year. We were fortunate to coach sometimes several lifters in the same session, but because we had enough coaching manpower there, we were able to divide things up, but still like operate together as the team and support each other as coaches, which just helps things run smoothly. But still have enough, coaching attention on hand. We're able to individualize things quite a lot.
That's true. And also, I feel like each coach last year had their own tasks, and we didn't even talk about it beforehand. It just happened naturally. So we just assigned different tasks, especially Peter, since he knew the athletes the best, since it was mainly his athletes. So he was basically directing everything, like you do this, and then it was a really great experience. But also, I once handled an entire group all by myself. Of course, like I can't compare it to a multi-platform competition. It was just in Belgium with one platform. It was pretty chill. And I've already heard a couple of times that when you handle, you also have to be sort of like a chameleon to the athletes. So you kind of have to match their personality, which is great when you're able to do that. But at the same time, I found that it's impossible to do it when you handle an entire group and you have a lot of athletes, since everyone has a different personality. So what happens if you try to match everyone's personality and they also see you changing the vibe all the time? Like it becomes very like unstable. So you have to provide some sort of stability. And I found that the best way to do this is just being yourself. Because at the end of the day, also what you say has to be authentic. It has to come out naturally. So if you stay yourself, and also the athletes ideally already know you beforehand and they know what they're signing up to, they can also adapt to a degree. So they will adapt if you provide stability, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think a coaching scenario where you have multiple people on one platform is probably the most common kind of group coaching scenario that coaches find themselves in. So probably I would say that experience is highly relevant. And I'm with you in terms of you do have to match energy, or you would at least hope to match energy a bit based on what you're capable of and what the athlete's capable of, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a good actor. I've always felt like the potential for that to come off badly for myself is pretty high. So I stay within the range that I'm capable of, right? If we need more excitement, more energy, I can do some of that, but it's going to be within, my own capability, because I think if I take it too far, it can be jarring, and that wouldn't be ideal. So I think especially in a situation where you're coaching a bunch of people all together like that, that makes sense. Makes sense to approach it that way.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what I've experienced too. Like, I think you made really good points about not trying to go too far outside of like what is authentically you. We've hosted competitions before at UW-Madison, and a lot of our lifters naturally sign up. And so there have been times where I think I was handling 14 people in one session, and it was just, all right, go out there and go. And with that many people, it becomes very, very much, the interactions are so brief that I don't even have a whole lot of time to like switch. And so it's just like, it's going to be the kind of pretty similar for a lot of people. So that was pretty hectic, but just, yeah, same sort of experience.
Okay, but let's now add more chaos to it, Kenny. What would you do if you would decide to compete at the same competition? How would you handle that?
I'd drop the competition. I don't think I could do that. That'd be a lot.
Yeah.
That is one.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard of people doing like raw and equipped in the same competition and things like that. But I think to compete and coach in the same session is a split of attention that would be pretty challenging. Have you done that, Gaby?
Yes, I've done it in Belgium. And I have to say that there's always one thing that will suffer. So of course I decided to put my athletes first, and I lowered my own expectations. So I just took a chill meet. But if it's really important to you, then like if you know yourself and you know the kind of attention that you need, or let's say not attention, but let's say focus that you need to put on competing, how focused and how self-centered you need to be, then just don't do it. Yeah, that's my advice. If you're very like social and you need to talk and you can divide your attention and your focus, then yeah, maybe, but not if you need to be at different platforms at the same time. It can definitely help if you're doing it with other coaches also, but eventually I think it will end up more the coaches taking over your roles, because also at a competition anything can happen, so you also need to be prepared for that. But how can you be prepared for let's say you get injured, you can't even stand up anymore afterwards, and you have athletes that you still need to handle. So that would be the worst case scenario.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, you're just praying that a lot of things won't happen. But of course, there are coaches that are capable of doing that. You just really need to know yourself, and you need to feel very comfortable in the chaos and also in the environment. So try to provide the most stability as possible, having other people to help you. But Kenny, another question now that we've talked about injuries, what do you do in a group when an athlete gets severely injured? Because if you can compare it to a teaching environment, I remember when I had PE classes where I needed to teach an entire group. We've been taught that, for example, when a student gets injured, you can't just turn your back on the entire class. I think you can also kind of compare it to that you maybe can't neglect the other athletes, but at the same time also the athlete that just got injured needs attention. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a good question and a tough situation. I mean, both for the coach involved and for the lifter. I had this kind of happen back at a meet in March where we got to deadlifts, and actually it was even showing up a little bit on bench. A lifter had a kind of a back injury. We had, a dozen or so lifters in this competition, pretty fast paced, and people were going all over the place. And somebody was letting me know that they're hurting. And so they got all of my attention. That if there was ever a down moment where I would just kind of be like standing around or like waiting for the next attempt to kind of show up or something like that, all of my attention went to that person who was in pain and trying to understand what was happening, what we could do about it, and then put that into action. But I think understanding that there is not always a whole lot that you can do to immediately just resolve the injury, that takes a lot of time. It's how can we safely make it through the rest of this meet is kind of the next question that shows up. And so kind of do what you can to make them comfortable, make sure that they understand what's going on and what the risk versus the benefit of completing the competition would be and how they feel about that. And if you can set up some kind of options where if you go through the situation, it's a very bad back injury or something, and the lifter just is like, look, I want to do this. However, I also can't even put on my belt without a lot of pain. Then you might just be able to say, we got to shut this down. And I think we should move on. You can try to do this before you deadlift, but we can't put you in a risky situation. And so then it kind of can shorten the amount of time that you have to spend with somebody. I also remember leaning a lot on my other people that were supporting me. So pulling an extra person from the warm-up room. It's like, okay, the warm-up room is going to be kind of tough for the people that are remaining. It's going to be a little bit more loading for them, but now I can have somebody out here to help me make some of the attempt selection for the other lifters while I'm giving a little bit more attention to this injured person. And again, doing all the things, figuring out what has happened, what we can do about it, and that sort of stuff. So it is kind of like a balance, like you said, that you can't completely turn my back on the rest of the competition. Can't just say, okay, actually everybody else stop and let me figure this out real quick and I'll come back. I can't do that, unfortunately. But if I can give as much attention to the person as possible, set up as many things, give them the best information that I can, and then ask for help when I have it, then I ended up in a pretty good spot and everybody made it out okay.
Yeah, definitely. You also always need to stay calm and focused in those kind of situations. I think you can only be prepared so much, but for those kind of situations, how well prepared can you be, So I think what always helps is just to stay calm and focused, and the rest will be all right.
Yeah, definitely. Nobody that's hurt benefits from everybody else around them panicking. So
Yeah,
better idea to just be like,
panic. Everyone else will panic too.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Like you said, in a lot of those situations, there's not much that can be done anyway. So it's what I keep hearing is as resources, time, and attention get more constrained in a coaching environment, probably the thing that gets limited first is some of the, I guess I would say, emotional support type of roles that coaches fill. And you focus more on the tactical being the essential component. We must have good attempt selection. We must warm up and do that on time. And it's nice if I can also fill these other roles of helping an athlete, go through what's essentially a stressful situation. But if I'm constrained in certain ways, then I won't be able to do very much in that area, which I think makes sense. And that kind of matches up to my experience too, of being on the other end of that, which has been a little while ago now, but being an athlete in a group coached situation, I do feel more like I'm responsible for what I'm doing, and coach is there to help me make good decisions at, these important junctures, but, is not helping me with my mental game and stuff like that at that point, because there's other things to worry about. And that always seemed fine to me. I suppose it's going to vary from person to person.
Yeah, I think all of that tracks exactly with what my experience has been with a lot of group coaching. And I think a big part of lifters being comfortable with that type of arrangement comes from the expectation. Hey, there are 18 of us going to this competition, and there is one of me, and I've got 3 people helping out. We're going to do a great job of managing a lot of this. However, there is not one of us for each of you. And so the individual attention is not going to be there. If you have any concerns with this, you have something that all of us that are your support need to know in order to better support you and make sure that nothing goes wrong, whether that's a health issue or a mental focus piece, let us know and we'll do our best to take care of that. But we only have limited resources.
Have you guys ever had anybody wander off in competition? I don't mean like a trip to the bathroom or something. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's not time to warm up yet. They think, what are you doing over here? Right? Anything like that?
I was thinking more of like a lot of bathroom trips. Like last year at Collegiate Nationals, I'd like most of my lifters will tell me where they're going, because I try to like tell them, like, anytime that I'm stepping away, here is where I'm going. Here's how long it's going to take. If I'm not back, you have my number and you can call me. And they will tell me that too. They're like, I'm just going to go to the bathroom. But I had a guy who just kept disappearing. I'm like, all right. And so I need my guy to take 220 kilos net. I'm looking around for him and I have no idea where he went. It just keep going to the bathroom in between like all the warm-ups. And I'm like, man, we got to figure something else out here. And
get that guy
we made it through fine, but it was stressful.
Yeah, same. I think the worst that can happen is when your athlete just disappears, I always love when my athletes tell me, okay, I'm going to the bathroom, because then I know, okay, if I can't find them in time, I know where to go. The worst thing is when I have to run around and ask other coaches and athletes, like, where's my athlete? Like, no, please just tell me where you're going. I also had one athlete, she was very social and she needed that to perform the best, because that's just how her energy was. And I love that. But she would ask me while standing in the row waiting to go on the platform, can I go pee real quick? Like, no, there's one athlete in front of you. The boy is about to get loaded. And then after the attempt, even if I made sure to set the expectations clear that, okay, we have 1 minute after each attempt to discuss how it went and how we can move on, she would immediately run to her friends and tell them, like, yeah, it was so nice. And then I was like, please come here. Like, we're about to time out. So that was quite stressful, but it was also fun. I think those kind of things make handling challenging, keep you alive.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it makes for good stories, at least. I like the idea of setting those expectations and, good communication of like, I'm going here and I'll be back. I did have a lifter wander off at one point and start warming up on other platforms at times that were not appropriate. And we had worked together a lot, though. I mean, it's just pre-competition nerves being what they are. I often feel that impulse myself in competitions where I'm like, I just don't want to be standing around, and it feels like I ought to be doing something, that you shouldn't, that you should. In fact, you're supposed to be standing around, like, regardless of what it feels like. And it's just that, I suppose, for one guy, the impulse was a little too strong that day. But that is one that stands out in my memory.
I just have one thing in mind, because at my last competition, it was in the gym that I go to, and I live 3 minutes by bike away. So after the weigh-in, I actually went home to eat something. That's a luxury not everyone can have. I just imagine like going home between the lift after squats and not telling my coach, and then he's like, Where are you?
Oh, I
Like,
went
I'm at
home.
home chilling on the couch. Just let me know when I can get started warming up.
Coach's head explodes. Yeah. Those are, I mean, coaching in general and any sort of large form of coaching in particular ends up being good networking experience as well. As a good opportunity for coaches to meet with each other, help each other on the platform in the warm up room. And you never know when those connections can be helpful, And quick soapbox, I guess, on networking. I think a lot of people overcomplicate it. People in business spaces overcomplicate it. And surely, if you're a young coach thinking networking, you're going to overcomplicate it. It's not hard. It's just be helpful, cultivate relationships, be friendly. There's really not much to it. It's essentially just that. And I wouldn't put any more on it than that, I guess. I suppose that's it, just to say those are good opportunities in the warm-up halls of major competitions.
Yeah, I think an experience pretty similar to what you're describing. Like Saturday morning, had an 82.5 kilo male lifter, and we got there pretty early. It's first session, and so we kind of were able to pick which warm-up platform we wanted. We hung out there, waited for other people to show up, coordinated who was going to be in what flights, talked to the coaches that are there, talked to the athletes that are there. Where are you guys from? That sort of thing. And just helped load all the weights and kind of coordinate things. And the other coaches that were there were super appreciative of that. Like there's one person who they told me after the fact that they were like going through a whole lot. They had taken like an overnight flight to get there after like some personal events. And they're like, it was so nice that you could just load stuff. I like, thank you so much for doing that. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it. It was just like, okay, well, this needs to go on the bar, so we're going to have to load it. We'll just go ahead and do that. And I'm still like talking to them, a little bit now, and it's good people to know.
Something you said kind of in the beginning, Kenny, you were talking about the need for coordination among, a coach and other people who are helping, be it other coaches or helpers or whatever, roles that you've got assigned, just needing to have good communication. What sorts of tactics did you guys use to enhance that communication? Is there like a group text is sufficient, or what kinds of things did you notice that you guys started doing that were helpful?
We being John and I made a spreadsheet beforehand of like, here are the days, here are the sessions, here's who's in each session, when the weigh-in is for this session, what platform and flight they're in, just kind of laying out all this like important skeletal information. So and like which lifter is paired up with who, or like, do we need to find somebody else to add to like the coverage here so that everybody's got some level of attention. And that was really helpful for just kind of like planning who needed to be where, when on a very broad scale. And then the night beforehand, especially with our team, it would be a lot of coordination of like, well, I got to go in the morning on Saturday because I'm going to take one of the rental cars with this lifter in the morning. If anyone else wants to come along, let me know. If not, that's fine. And then the other rental car will come later in the day with these people. They're going to leave at this time. So you need to be in the hotel lobby at this time if you want to come along. And just kind of laying that out day by day, not trying to plan it too far in advance because people get tired, have an exam, or, want to go get food at a different time or just need to sleep. And that's all fine and can kind of fluctuate. Having a group text and not trying to plan too much and be too rigid was, I think, a helpful thing for that day-to-day aspect. As long as we had the larger skeleton, at least the athletes need to be here. They need to be at the competition. Then everything else could kind of flow around that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like the idea of planning what you can, but still leaving room for flexibility and changes. Even from a competition standpoint, lots of times weigh-in times will shift and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense, and not to line everything too tight it saves you down the road, when you need to be flexible for certain things. Well, Kenny,
A good thing for the lifters to even kind of internalize as well is that we might say that you should take your last warm up 10 lifters out or whatever it may be, but there are these other things that are going to happen, and just being aware and not being too bothered by those very small details is going to be very helpful, because if you spend time worrying about those little details, you're taking away time that you could be thinking about your warm-ups, visualizing your lift, paying attention to your hydration, your nutrition, thinking about going to the bathroom before your one lifter out, like Gabby's lifter. So that is all helpful.
So I suppose my last question for you here is just kind of what comes next from, I guess, at a university level in particular. So University of Wisconsin-Madison Collegiate Nationals wraps up that season, and now there's kind of this transition point. So what does the upcoming period of time look like?
Yeah, summer is usually pretty quiet for us. Like, nobody's on campus. Everybody's gone back to most people have gone back to their respective states or wherever they came from to come to the university. So they'll continue training, and we'll keep going. And every once in a while, like people keep in touch on Instagram and stuff like that for the team aspect. But the team doesn't usually coordinate events during the summer. And then as we approach the fall, we'll get started again. Social events, we'll have, team tryouts and everything to kind of like build a little bit of community. Later on in the fall, probably in like the November, December timeframes, we have a couple of team meets where people can have their first kind of competition exposure or go support their teammates, stuff like that. And then we kind of use those also as qualifier meets for next year's Collegiate Nationals, and just sort of let things flow as we get closer. And if we can bring a big team to Collegiate Nationals again, then that's going to be a lot of fun.
Sounds good to me. We can find a way to get coaching stuff there, and we'll have another successful competition. So, Kenny, thanks for your work at Collegiate Nationals, and thanks for your time here and kind of sharing some lessons learned. Same to you, Gabby. It's always good to hear your thoughts and your experiences as well. Thanks everybody for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next time.